Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Monday, May 19th. This is episode 197. Matt, Roy, Chuck Miketinac. Chuck, how was the weekend?
It was great.
That's better than usual.
Yes.
Usually you say without incident. Free of incident.
Yes. I just wish it was a little longer, as it turns out, like most people, right?
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
You always want what you can't have.
Did you do anything interesting this weekend?
No, it was just free of incident. That's why it was great.
I watched a lot of sports this weekend. I'm consistently brought to this realization every year that hockey has the best playoffs in any sport. Every year. Because there's always some game, which I don't care about at all, that is like 1-1 going into the last minute and then it's sudden death overtime in the playoffs. It's the best playoff structure of any in the NFL. Or in the world.
There are a lot of people that would agree with you, and I found that fascinating that you said that, because the last time I was in Dallas, all of the photographers that were there for Cowboys that work in the Metroplex all say the same thing. Nothing like playoff hockey. They love it. They love that the Stars are doing well, and I was disappointed to see the Leafs bow out in Game 7 like that, the way they did.
So
poor Leafs, eh?
Yeah, I want to make a public confession.
You don't like hockey at all?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought was coming.
No, it's nothing to do with hockey.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mind hockey, but I don't watch it. But I watched WNBA this weekend.
You watched the Fever game?
Of course. Is there other?
There is other teams, contrary to popular belief.
You watched the same game?
Have you watched it too? Dang. Did you watch the Fever game?
I did not.
I didn't watch a second of the Fever game. I saw highlights of it, but I didn't watch a second of it. I thought that the entire Caitlin Clark snafu with Angel Reese was completely blown out of proportion. But
you have to have drama.
Yeah.
In order to build an audience.
You
can't have a yang if you don't have a yang.
It's such like manufactured drama, though. Like,
are you kidding? She tried to kill her.
My favorite part about that was Aaliyah Boston not knowing that she got the technical after the game. And then her being like, dang, now I have to pay a fine. And Caitlin Clark was like, I got you. I'll pay the fine. Also, did you see, now that we're off on the tangent, did you see in that game, Dave Portnoy put a $25,000 on Caitlin Clark to win, or to get a triple-double. She got her 10th rebound, which completed the triple-double with about 2 minutes left in the game. They left her in there so she could get her triple-double. And he made $350,000 on that bet, which is almost double what players in the NBA or in the WNBA make. Like, it's so much more than any WNBA player will make this season. So it was just a weird little thing. But anyway, regarding the hockey playoffs, I don't even know where I was going with that. You got me off on it.
We spun off the rails already.
You lost my train of thought.
Did something exciting happen in the hockey playoffs? Was there
No,
something?
We were talking about the Leafs.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Poor Leafs.
This is how I knew the Leafs were going to lose last night. So.
After the fourth goal?
No.
After the fifth goal?
After the sixth goal. Okay. No. Before the game, Drake, this rapper, put $1 million on the Leafs to win.
Oh my gosh, he jinxed it.
And every bet he makes loses. Like, he's one of those guys where he just bets on everything and he just can't win. So as soon as he bet on the Leafs, I was like, oh, poor Leafs. They're so screwed. And then, sure enough, he ended up losing $1.25 million yesterday. Dropping the bucket for him, but still. Anyway, we got actual things to get to. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, News 4 Fox SA. Download, rate, review the podcast version wherever you get your podcasts, both on Apple and Spotify, wherever else you get them. A lot of things we want to get to. So Dylan Harper, a little over a month away from the NBA draft. I think it's on June 25th. And the Spurs have the number 2 pick. Still a little bit of speculation of what they might do at number 2. A lot of talk about Dylan Harper, the guard from Rutgers right now, but there might be some trouble in paradise there because Ron Harper, his dad, 5-time NBA champion with the Lakers and with the Bulls, more importantly, the Bulls. LA fan of Javi over here loves Ron Harper. Some are thinking we might have another Uncle Dennis situation going on here. For those who don't know, the Kawhi Leonard situation with the Spurs, because of some things that Ron Harper has said on Twitter over the last week or so since the Spurs won, or I think they didn't win the lottery, but I think they won the lottery, basically won the lottery, and got the number 2 pick. So we'll break all that down for you and all the comments from the 5-time NBA champ that were a little bit interesting. Plus, Cowboys OTAs are starting this week, so this will be the first time we see almost the full roster out on the field. Obviously, Dak's still limited, Trayvon Diggs still limited. Micah might not participate fully in these, but even though he did participate in the voluntary workouts. So, still some lingering questions surrounding this roster. If the George Pickens experiment will work out, which position groups we're taking a look at this week, since you'll be down there in Dallas at camp tomorrow. But I do want to start with the Dylan Harper situation. So, I'm more of a Ron Harper situation. The Spurs have the number 2 pick. A lot of speculation on Dylan Harper. He's a 6'4" guard from Rutgers, averaged 19 points last year as a freshman. He compares himself to Cade Cunningham and SGA. Pretty good comparisons. He's doing that himself, though. So I mean, he's pretty confident.
Hold on there, big fella.
Confident in his abilities. He's the son of 5-time NBA champ Ron Harper. A couple of tweets from Ron Harper have caught the eye of Spurs fans and fans around the NBA circles. You can go ahead and play that, Javi. So last week, Ron Harper posted saying, "I love all these NBA GMs on Twitter, but I keep telling everyone, until June 25th, a team calls Dylan Harper's name, he's not on a team. Enjoy dreaming." So people started dreaming. Someone quote tweeted it, photoshopped a picture of Dylan Harper in a Nets uniform, basically saying, "So you're telling me there's a chance?" And Ron Harper then responded to it saying, "Always a chance with trades and picks, and the Knicks gave you a lot of both." So there's a couple of things there. He's not closing the door on anything. He's kind of leaving everything open for interpretation. And a lot of Spurs fans, a lot of Spurs, off media people have started saying, does he want his son to be a Spur? And you can look at those and say, I don't know if he does.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can read a lot into that, right? And I think to what Ron Harper says, by the way, when I think of Ron Harper, do you think of the actor Ron Harper at all? Does that come to mind at our age?
He played for the Cavs for a while, and like when he was broken down, but he was still
Ron Harper?
Yeah, he was still a great contributor.
Ron Harper, actor. Harper. I think if you look that up, you'll know who I'm talking about. Think Planet of the Apes.
Think
the TV
Planet
show
of the Apes.
Okay, but anyway. Ron Harper says some things in there. He's right. Until we get to draft day and you hear what's going to happen, and we don't know, too, behind the scenes, if there aren't already deals being worked out before the draft, then they're saving all of this intel, proprietary information, to happen on draft night to make draft night even more interesting. Imagine how much more interesting draft night would be if you think that maybe the number 1 pick is in play to be traded, or the number 2 pick, or the number 3 pick. So there's a lot of moving parts between now and draft day, and why not drum up speculative stuff to try to create interest in?
It goes to that point a little bit that the drama surrounding this is from he's interacting with a lot of Nets fans. And Ron Harper, Dylan Harper have a lot of ties to the New Jersey area. Obviously, he went to Rutgers. He knows the coach over Rutgers really well, which is why he went there. They have, Sean Marks, the GM over there, is a former Spurs disciple. So, I mean, there's a lot of, interweaving of this convoluted web that's going on. So I can see why there's a lot of people that are kind of connecting the two. But in San Antonio, I think there's still a little bit of scar tissue when you have a family member butting their nose, for lack of a better term, into their son's or family member's business. You were here covering the Kawhi situation when everything went to hell. I mean, does this remind you of that at all?
Well, no, I mean, because I think, the untold story a lot with the Kawhi situation is it takes 2 to tango, right? It wasn't just Kawhi, right? They had a situation. They didn't agree on the situation, whatever those situations were, and you got the result being what it was, right? They traded Kawhi to Siberia, Toronto, the one place he didn't want to go because of the cold weather.
And won a championship.
What does he do? He wins a championship with Green. I saw Danny Green talking about this on a podcast the other day, and I keep forgetting that Danny Green probably was the last guy that wanted to be included in this trade and then have his life, go through all the upheaval of having to be traded. But then, Danny won a championship too, which was really, really cool that ended up happening for him too. But so, I don't know. I mean, Ron Harper, you talked about the resume, right? I mean, he was on really good Bulls teams, and then I've forgotten that he'd won a championship with the Lakers too. I mean, he didn't draw a line in the sand and said, we absolutely don't want to come here. So
he didn't.
I
think it just hurt. It's like almost rehashing old wounds for people. And I think that's what I would say is it's just the kind of the way of the world now. You saw this story last week with Caleb Williams and his dad trying to, figure out a way to get Caleb to not go to Chicago because that's where, that's Siberia for quarterbacks. They've never had a 4,000-yard passer. In fact, they've had a Pope more recently than they've had a 4,000-yard passer in Chicago. So I think that's just the way of the world in the case where player empowerment is such a thing now. And I mean, it always was to a little bit of an extent. John Elway forcing his way out of Baltimore, and Eli Manning forcing his way out of San Diego and to the Giants. I mean, it's always been a little bit of a thing, but it's only for that upper echelon Wemby type player, that Cooper Flagg type player that will come out and be like, I don't want to go there. I'm not going there, and you'll trade me because my services are that warranted.
I think what you say is wise, and I think in the NBA it's different because of how few guys are on each team, right? It's different than the NFL because there's only 1/5 the amount of guys that are on a roster. I, too, look at it this way, that all these players, not just the upper echelon guys, even guys coming into the league because of how young the league is, these dudes are already corporations before they get to the league. And so you can maneuver the chessboard in certain ways, and I think this wouldn't be the first time that you could have outside forces, i.e. a player who's a corporation, start to angle to go to certain places or make the case of why this corporation fits better in this city or this corporation fits better in that city. And so this is a problem that has been ongoing in the NBA. And it's like, we've talked about this before. It's like, does Victor Wembanyama work for the Spurs or do the Spurs work for Victor Wembanyama?
I mean, takes a little bit of both.
I would argue the latter rather than the former at this point because of how the business has been structured and allowed to evolve. I'm not saying it's good or bad; it's just what it is.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, but I would err on the former. But
can I post a hypothesis about this? So I think this might be some Shedeur Sanders like backlash, where they talked the big game, right? And they said, "Oh, he's going in the first round." Blah 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 blah. And maybe he's just backing off a little bit and saying, "Hey, this is going on with us. We'll just have to wait."
That's fair. I mean, that could be what he's spitballing.
I mean, and that's where I was going to go with this. Is like in my opinion, it's all kind of being blown out of proportion. The whole Ron Harper, Dylan Harper stuff. All he's saying is nothing's set in stone. Wait till June 25th, and we'll see where he goes. Wherever he goes, he's going to be, it's going to be where he goes. The Spurs might trade the second pick in the draft. He might not go to San Antonio. He might, they might go to the Nets. He might get traded for Giannis. Like, you don't know exactly what's going to happen on draft night. Is Ron Harper part of the machine that's trying to hype up the draft? No, he's just saying, I don't know what what's going to happen with my son right now. And I think there's a part of this, and I'm speaking for Ron Harper at this point, which probably isn't intelligent of me, but I'm going to anyway. I think there's a part of this where he's like, I want my son to enjoy the next month and a half of speculation and this process and going through. You only get drafted once. So why would I say, oh, he's going to the Spurs, this is going to happen, and then be let down when Ace Bailey goes number 2 and then he ends up going number 3? Like, there's a lot of that there. It's not like he came out and said, F the Spurs, I don't want them to go there. He didn't go nuclear on San Antonio. Like, in fact, there was another tweet that said that he was responding to a fan and said, he said that Wemby and Dylan Harper could be really special. Like, he didn't say anything bad about Wemby. Like, he's not going nuclear on Wemby or San Antonio or anything like that. So I think it's all kind of just like, meh. Like, come on.
We got a couple comments from here.
Let's hear it.
Tom Guerrero in the house.
Shout out Tom Guerrero.
He said another daddy ball getting in the way.
Another what?
Daddy ball.
Elazar says, I think his father wants him to go somewhere he can be a star on his own. And then Damian says, it's a long post, but basically he says multiple guards, running all these guards at one time, as OKC does, is the new NBA.
Okay, well, speaking of Elazar, who's to say that he can't come to San Antonio and be a star? Like, you'll have De'Aaron Fox. Obviously, I'm a little questionable. I'm a little skeptical.
Eliezer Gordon.
Skeptical. What?
Eliezer Gordon was a great basketball player at Texas State back in the day. Sorry, I heard his name.
Sometimes I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Eleazar is a guy's name. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Eliezer.
Anyway.
If it is Eliezer
You guys
Gordon,
are-
even if it's just Eliezer, and I hope we pronounced your name right.
It's a great name.
Anyway,
It is fantastic. And his nickname was Laser because he could shoot.
as far as the second guy or the third,
But I digress.
third one you mentioned, the OKC is the way of the future. You saw how well they played yesterday, but you need to have shooting to be OKC, and the Spurs can't shoot. So we'll see. We'll see if Dylan Harper can help. But anyway, I just thought all that stuff with Dylan Harper and Ron Harper was very interesting because people are always looking for a story to blow up and to be like, oh, this is going to blow up the Spurs draft. It's like, no, probably not. They're still going to draft Dylan Harper. And by the way, why in the hell would they trade back with the Nets, who are at 8, and have 4 picks in the draft? I think the Nets are at 8, 26, 27, and 36 or something like that. Why the hell would they trade back to 8 when they have 2? Like, the Spurs are trying to not accelerate the timeline or skip steps. They're not trying to go backwards. Like, you just got a gift by getting the number 2 pick in the draft. Why would you trade back to 8 when you're trying to make the playoffs next season?
Well, I think it comes down to why would you do it? Well, you would do it if you felt like you've taken the 8 best guys in the league and you felt comfortable that any one of those 8 guys you could see in your uniform and producing and being a part of a program and being a guy that's going to be an above average player at some point in the NBA. That's the reason why you would do it. Now, whether they feel that way about this draft pool, we'll find out on draft night, like we did last night, where they didn't feel like the top 8 guys were worth a damn.
Everything, yeah.
Or anybody
last
after
year,
the top 8, I should say.
I don't think they thought anything past the top 4 was worth a damn.
That might
last
be
year.
accurate too.
That's why they traded Rob Dillingham for a 2031 first-round pick, which ended up helping them get De'Aaron Fox. So, you never know. Draft night will be interesting on June 25th. It's weird that it's a month and a half away. Also, very weird that they haven't announced the NBA MVP yet, because that's the only award they haven't announced. And it was between Jokic and SGA there. I saw something on Twitter that was really funny. That was like, why haven't they announced the NBA MVP yet? Oh, they're waiting to see who wins the series between the Thunder and the Nuggets.
Fair.
Anyway, all right, let's move on to the Cowboys. So Cowboys OTAs beginning this week. A lot of teams OTAs beginning this week, but we'll focus on the Cowboys. Big questions that you're looking to answer when you go down tomorrow.
So I'm going to go way off the rails on this.
Shocker.
Last year at this time, who was one of the guys that we were talking about a lot on the defensive side of the ball that we felt like was in a pretty good position to make a leap if he was given more playing time?
Jordan Lewis.
Sam Williams.
Oh.
And then what happened to Sam Williams?
He got hurt.
He did.
Out for the year.
So he should be, at some point, be ready to come back. And then, so I'm a little surprised that his name, I haven't heard his name hardly at all, but this has been in the back of my mind now for a number of weeks. It's like, why isn't anybody talking about this guy? I mean, he was 2 years ago, the guy would come and make a huge play for you. And I started to wonder, well, what if Sam Williams had stayed healthy, would Overshone had gotten as much playing time as he ended up with last year? Or could they both been on the field ideally at the same time?
Well, different
Now,
positions, though.
Yes. But what I'm saying is how much better then does Overshone be with Sam Williams on the field? And how much better does Sam Williams then become if Overshone's on the field with him too, and Micah and all the other, your very best players, if you think that Sam Williams is one of your best guys. So I'm curious now to see, A, when Overshone is going to be due back or what they feel like the timeline is looking to be. And then also, where does Sam Williams figure into this picture? Because if he's back 100%, that's another piece that you have going into this season that could be one of those where nobody's talking about it, but that could be one of those really, really high-level moves that you already had the guy in-house and nobody's talking about it, but at what point will we be talking about it?
Well, it's unfortunate, too, because you never know how he's going to come back because he tore his ACL in the training camp last year, and we've seen Michael Gallup almost end an NFL career because he couldn't make it back to what he was after an ACL tear. So you never know exactly what he's going to come back as, but also it's out of sight, out of mind. Like, he's out doing rehab and nobody's talking about him because he's just not in the picture right now. He's out on the side, on the side of the practice field doing his rehab and whatnot, and he's not in the lineup right now. And you're focusing more on Odigizua, and you're focusing more on Ezaraku, and you're focusing more on Maris Liafau, and all of the guys that are going to hopefully make a difference and make a leap this year. You just don't see him very often.
Right. And I think the obvious, to your point earlier, and, what will we be looking at? What does George Pickens with his 16.3 yards per catch look like opposite 88? That's going to be fun. That's going to be fun to see what that looks like.
Let's get to that right now. So CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens were asked about it. Javi, I think you have to restart that bite over there on the left side. Thank you. They were asked about it. I forget where they were. It looks like they're on a baseball field. But anyway, this is what CeeDee Lamb had to say about George Pickens and him.
Oh, no, we both ones.
Yeah.
It ain't no A, B, none of that. It's one. You look over there, you see one. You look over here, you see another one. So do what you got to do with that.
Basically, he said, we're both ones. There's no A and B receiver. We're both ones. You got to deal with him. You got to deal with me. So when you look at that combo, do you think that that's right? Or is CD still, CD still CD?
Oh, yeah. CD's still number one. Let's not mix this up too much. But, again, you're going to have to pick your poison. Where are you going to tilt the defense? Where are you going to tilt the safeties? And then how much more valuable does the tight end then become? It just gives them another guy that's going to space the defense. And, on paper, it sure looks good. I like the move. I don't know what kind of a guy we're talking about. Seems like he's got a really good personality and, but I don't know what the issues were in Pittsburgh. And it really doesn't matter at this point because everything is new right now. This is a young man that, even with the white hats, is going into a contract year, and let's see how he ends up performing.
I'll be interested to hear from you tomorrow about how Dak looks. He's going to be limited because of that hamstring avulsion, the partially torn off the bone hamstring that he suffered during the Atlanta Falcons game last year. So I'll be interested to see how he looks. There's a bunch of talk about how his physique is, the weight that he's dropped, how the weight has moved around to kind of his legs and his torso and his abdominals and more of his core. So I'll be interested to see your report tomorrow on what he looks like.
I'm curious to see, too, as to, how much of full speed is he going to go? Probably not, right? So it won't be fair to kind of measure it with the backdrop of coming off the injury that cost him his whole season. So, they're going to have to do a slow ramp up, obviously, with him, and it's probably going to go all the way straight through training camp. But it will be curious to see how much then do the other quarterbacks, when they're running 2-minute stuff or how they're even going to approach 2 minutes. That was, a McCarthyism was you're always in the 2-minute offense. You always wanted to be elite at being able to execute during that time of the game. So all of it's going to be very fascinating to see what this looks like compared to other OTAs. We've already seen some nuanced things with how Schottenheimer likes to do things as opposed to McCarthy in terms of, up-tempo but less time on the field, other things too. But, again, a lot of this will be like Christmas morning. You're seeing how the cookies get differently.
There's 3 other position groups that I'm interested in figuring out. Without Chuma Edoga, who's going to be the third tackle now? Because that guy always ends up playing, whether Tyler Guyton is hurt or Tyler Guyton's not playing well, or Terrence Steele gets hurt or Terrence Steele's not playing well. Who the starters are. Who's the backup tackle going to be is who I'm interested in seeing who emerges from that kind of group behind them. The running back situation is eternally interesting.
Right.
Miles Sanders.
1 through 5.
1 through 5. Jaden Blue, Phil Maffa, Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, Deuce Vaughn, Malik Davis. Who is going to grasp this starting job and run with it, literally? I don't know. I'm going to be really interested to see who's running with the ones and running with the twos when OTAs come around and when minicamps come around.
I'm going to be surprised if Miles is completely healthy, that he's not the guy to beat in this scenario at this point. And then, who's going to be the guy that's hit the lightning to his thunder, to use probably a bad phrase. But, who's going to be number 2? Who's going to be number 3? Who's going to be number 4? Who's going to be number 5? Who ends up not making the team? Who ends up back on the practice squad? He drafted 2 guys, so you got to assume that both of those guys are going to be on the roster in some way, shape, or form. And then you got a lot of other guys that you could make an argument for. So you're right. I think that the one position group where there's so much of the story yet to unfold that's what makes it super interesting. Right?
And the other one is the defensive back locker room and lineup. Trayvon Diggs obviously working his way back from injury, as seems to be the story every single year, outside of the 1 year that he had 11 interceptions. DaRon Bland also missed most of last year with an injury. We just never get those two on the field at the same time. And then you have the question of who's going to be the nickelback with Jordan Lewis gone. Is it going to be, Siobhan Revel? Is it going to be the Kyer Elam? Like, who is going to step into that role is another thing that is going to really hinge and have a drastic effect on the Cowboys season, because they weren't great against the run last year. They weren't great against the pass last year. Through no fault of Jordan Lewis's, he had a phenomenal season, which is why he got paid by the Jacksonville Jaguars this offseason. But they need continuity in the defensive backfield.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that every team's battling, right? I mean, the team that you start out with at the beginning of the season is going to look completely different at the end. So, that's why you've got to draft well, because some of these guys are going to be key contributors as we go on through the course of the season, no matter where they're at in the depth chart. And, and then there's some little stories I think that are fascinating. I mean, out of nowhere yesterday, DeMarvion Overshown said he drowned as a 6-year-old. And the next thing you know is he sees white lights. So it's like, well, where did this come from? And then Wanye said he was on a plane, I'm assuming back to Dallas, and maybe I shouldn't make that leap, but that the plane wheel wasn't working when they landed. I mean, there's so many little things, little storylines that have creeped up over the last couple days that are wildly interesting to me. And then, hopefully those guys will be in the locker room. They will be over time during the course of this OTA and minicamp, but, who's going to be there tomorrow when I'm there? Hopefully a lot of what we just talked about, and we'll be able to answer some of those questions.
I think that the Cowboys, the DaRon Bland of it all is a little interesting as well, because he's due for a big contract extension. Either this offseason or next offseason, because he's a free agent after this season. So I think, and this is just me spitballing here, but I think Siobhan Revel is the heir apparent there. I think at least they're hoping that Siobhan Revel can step into that, and they can let DaRon Bland walk after this season, because they can't afford him. They can't. Like with Trayvon Diggs, you're already paying one big cornerback. You're already paying Osa Odighizuwa. Oh, and not to mention, you're going to have the highest paid defensive player in the league. You're going to have the highest paid quarterback in the league, and you're going to have the highest paid or second highest paid receiver in the league. You just can't afford these guys. And so I would be remiss, I guess, if I didn't look at this offseason or this season for DaRon Bland as one that is really, really crucial for him and the future of him in this league. So,
agree. I mean, but that's for all these guys, right? Even if the Cowboys can't afford to pay him, if he puts up numbers and he goes through a whole season where he's relatively healthy, he's going to get paid by somebody. And ultimately, right, everybody's looking for that big bag after the rookie contract.
Yeah.
And, they had a home run with where they drafted him. And so, their history has been to reward their guys that kind of work their way up the ranks and then have kind of earned the right to get paid like that. So, maybe they can strike a deal. Maybe it's not a max deal, or, what the top 3 cornerbacks are getting or whatever it is. But again, there's nothing to say that, as we sit here today, that even if Bland does have a great year, that he just wants to stay in Dallas because he feels like they were the team that cut him the greatest chance. And then again, I think, where he got drafted, the Cowboys were the ones that were fortunate enough to grab him. And, maybe some of that on him, he weighs in terms of, loyalty or whatever. But, I can't blame a guy too. And you're working under a rookie contract where he was drafted. It's a lot different than where,
just
the first round guys go.
Just ask Brock Purdy.
Right.
he's gonna make more in 1 week than he's made in his first 4 years in the league because of his new contract extension. So, last thing, do you think that we'll get any Micah news this week?
I don't know. You see, this is one of those weird things where you feel like you're living in the Mandela effect. I saw something somewhere last week on Friday, and it's like, how did I miss this? And somebody tweeted, and I thought it was Adam Schefter, but I think it was a burner account, as it turns out.
Yeah, it was Shelfer.
Okay.
Adam Shelfer.
So, I saw it, and I was like, okay, cool. They got this done, and now we don't have to worry about this anymore. And then I'm like, a couple hours pass. It's like, well, how come this isn't everywhere? And then, it hits me. So I'm glad I didn't, retweet, because that's the first thing you do when you see. That's the first thing I do, I should say.
You don't want to get got.
You don't want to get got. So, and I've been got before with an Aaron Rodgers quote somebody pulled a quote that was from 10 years old that fit whatever narrative was going on at the time. And see, he is a scumbag, or whatever. Like, no, that was just something he tweeted 10 years ago about something else.
Yeah, the NBA calls that getting centelled instead of central.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because there's an NBA Twitter account that is kind of a playoff of. There's one called NBA Central, which tweets actual stuff, and then there's one called NBA Centel, just takes the R out. So they tweet out outlandish crap.
Okay. That's pretty cool that somebody could make that connect. By the way, I never called Aaron Rodgers a scumbag. I'm grateful for what he did for the green and the gold.
If the shoe fits. Anyway, that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast.
You guys got anything? I feel like we've been hogging all the time over here.
Hobbs got a lot to say.
Hobby just wants to get out of here.
Hobby just wants us to shut up. Anyway, that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Remember, download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. 3:30 on Thursday. We will be back. See you then.